Were you somebody who was down the internet rabbit holes on transitioning and top surgery? You know, we see this very common, especially amongst women younger than you who go through this, where they've spent 3 hours or 5 hours a day on Reddit or YouTube and seeing, you know, it's like they talk about top surgery, which is like this, as you point out, this sort of carefree way of saying double mastectomy. I mean, having your body parts cut off. And for a young woman, you know, it's a massive decision. But I wonder whether you were one of those people who was on the internet all the time being fed information like, it's not a thing and you're going to love it and it's all good. Come on in.
Yeah, I definitely think that internet addiction played into my dissociation from my body, and also imbibing vast quantities of material, fantasizing about how awesome transition would be. Was a huge part of my routine around that time. Looking back, it's easy to see that I was in an obsessive rabbit hole, but I think that it's a pattern that a lot of detransitioners talk about, is sort of getting sucked into this world and just exposing yourself over and over again to this promotional material for these surgeries and hormones, essentially. It's hugely seductive.
I'm going to go back to Walt in a second, but, you know, when Walt did this, his doctor may have been very supportive versus the rest of the medical community back then. But I bet society wasn't, because, you know, it was a very different time. But when you did it, so my math is correct, it'd be around 2016, we had already crossed over to snaps, you know, for anybody who declares themselves trans. It had already been placed. We went from like, why is it okay to hate transgender people? To every transgender's person's decision must be celebrated as if 100% unassailable, and any doubt expressed about whether it was right for this person makes one a bigot, and so on. So did you experience that, like, sort of snaps and positivity and like society patting you on the back for this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I certainly had people in my life who were like worried about what I was doing, but no one really questioned me all that much. And a lot of people were very positive. And I think they meant well by that. You know, I don't take that badly, but it's not a cultural script that allows for a lot of, you know, saying to someone like, hey, you seem like you might be in a weird place, what might be the factors going into this? And especially from like, you know, doctors and therapists are the sort of people that I would hope would ask those questions. And certainly in those cases, I just didn't really get any investigation from those figures.
So, Walt, I'm going to guess you did not get snaps from society. And I understand you had 2 kids who did not want to be part of your life once you transitioned. So you must have felt very driven to do it anyway. You know, I look at the people who went through it back before we got to this point and think you must have felt the need to do it on a very deep level, because all of society was telling you back then, you're a freak. I mean, that was sort of where we were for most of society prior to the past 10, 15 years.
Yeah, I think that's so important to talk about, because I was driven, but what I was really driven by that I realized today as we're talking, Megyn, is being sexually abused and physically and emotionally abused. I did not want to be who I was. Because of the things that happened to me. And the only alternative was to become someone else. And so this is what happens to many of the people that I work with. And I've specifically talked to them, say, you know, why did you do this? And why did you, as a man, want to become a woman? And some of the people have reported to me that they wanted to remove their genitalia, not because they wanted to be women, but because they never wanted to be touched there again. So it was cutting their genitals off was a defense mechanism against ever being sexually abused again. And so I think this is why it's so important for when I went in and talked to Dr. Walker and told him about my childhood history, it's totally ignored. They don't look at that as reasons to consider that the person is driven by being abused physically or any other way, that it's just about getting hormones and getting surgery. And a good clinician would have been able to see that there was tremendous trauma and that that's what needed to be dealt with. And yeah, I was rejected wholeheartedly by absolutely everyone. And but that really wasn't that hard on me. I mean, I did go dramatically from working in the auto industry with a paycheck of well over $1,000 net per week to being homeless and broke, living in a park on 2nd Street in Long Beach because I couldn't get a job because I was, through the divorce, lost absolutely everything, including a car or any ability to make an income. And no one would hire me back in the auto industry because of what I went through. So I ended up doing catering and washing dishes. And I estimated having, 100 or so different jobs. Some of them were house cleaning and very domestic kind of things to survive. I lived in houses and in bedrooms with, people, where I could get a place to stay. And so this was sort of the crawl back. And what I really wanted to find out was, I really wanted to make Laura work. And so I started studying psychology. And when I started studying psychology, strangely enough, I started looking in the books at UC Santa Cruz when I was there in the psychology books and found out, wow, these individuals who identify as transgender have a lot of psychological issues. They suffer from body dysmorphia and dissociative disorders, schizophrenia, and separation anxiety was actually the first story that I read about that shocked me to my core, where a young man's, his mother had passed away and he decided to be transgender. Why? Because he was going to take on his mother's identity as a female in an effort to keep his mother alive. And that just jarred me. And I thought, wow, there's some deep psychological issues to this. And that's when I really began to dig in, and I studied psychology for 2 years at UC Santa Cruz. And then I started working in psychiatric hospitals and other recovery centers for several years, learning about how to treat and deal with these issues. And that's what helped me in many ways overcome this whole idea that, you need treatment for what happened to you, but you have to identify what it is that caused you to not like who you were. And once I was able to do that, I began to heal quickly. And that's what I do with the people I work with. And every one of them can tell me when I work with them over a period of time, what happened that caused them to not like who they were and why they dove into this idea about changing their genders. And so,
yeah, it's like you have some sort of pernicious cancer. You have pancreatic cancer and you go to see the doctor and the doctor says you need a knee replacement. And you wind up getting the knee replacement, which hurts a lot and is very unpleasant to go through. And when you're on the opposite side of the knee replacement, all those issues that you went to the doctor for in the first place don't feel better. In fact, they've gotten worse because they've gone on untreated even longer, the cancer. And now you have a new problem to deal with, which is a sore knee and pain associated with a surgical procedure that you didn't need. And so that's kind of what we're doing to a lot of these, especially young people. I mean, you guys were of age when you transitioned and detransitioned, meaning over 18. But we're doing this to very young children now, which is what makes it so controversial. But I have great empathy for you too. Just because it was done to you when you were an adult doesn't make it okay. For you, Grace, it was like, okay, like you say at the clinic, like, you're good, you're fine. Yes, let's take off your breasts. We shouldn't stop caring about people just because they're over the age of 18, especially when it's obvious they're having psychological trauma. So what happened to you, Grace, when you decided I'm going to stop the testosterone? And when was the moment when you said, not just that, I'm going to go back to being a woman as I was born?
Well, it was sort of a series of steps because, as you can imagine, it was really hard to admit to myself that I might have made a mistake of that, that scale. And I had to walk it back slowly. So I thought, well, maybe I've overshot. Maybe I want to be more androgynous. So I stopped the testosterone. And once I stopped the testosterone, a lot of the feelings that basically steroid had suppressed in me started flooding back. And it's hard to explain because it's so intense, but I would just describe it as sort of an epiphany again that I just had been basically like shoving things under the rug and like lying to myself about what was really like going on. And it just became impossible to deny that my expectation for transition, which was that I would feel more like me and more natural, whatever that meant, had not been met. I felt like I was playing a role, and I felt like I was trying to bury my emotions and become someone else, which, like Walt said, I think is pretty common.
As everyone starts to go back to school over the next few weeks, do some good by helping feed children who are facing hunger and food insecurity. Our partner, Good Ranchers, is on a mission to donate 100,000 high-quality meals to young children who often go unfed or who are malnourished from poor access to nutritious food. You can join this campaign by ordering a box of 100% American meat. Every order contributes meals to this cause and makes a huge difference in the lives of these children. Good Ranchers is an award-winning food delivery service that brings 100% American meat and seafood right to your door. They source the best of American farms so that you can get the highest quality food possible and trust what you're feeding to your family every time. Go to goodranchers.com/Megyn to join the movement today. You will get $30 off your order, you'll get free shipping, and you'll donate food to children in need. Giving back never felt or tasted so good. Let's help them hit and ideally pass that goal of 100,000 meals donated. Go to goodranchers.com/Megyn or just use my code MEGYN when you're checking out. Change the future one meal at a time with Good Ranchers. goodranchers.com/Megyn. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.